Hello guys, I would like to try something new. I'm starting a new series where I read out 3 scary stories. Hope it interests you, and don't forget to subscribe for more. Story 1, I was almost kidnapped or murdered. A few months ago, I left my friend's house at about 3 or 4 in the morning. I was 17 and drove a very recognizable blue car with stickers on the back. As I was on the road leading to my neighborhood, I realized that this car behind me had been there for a very long time. It was a bigger white car and their brights were on, so I couldn't see who was inside. I got extremely suspicious and I decided to drive past my neighborhood and into a different one. I turned left into the neighborhood and then made a right turn. They were still behind me. I made another right turn and another until I was out of the neighborhood. I made an extremely sharp right turn back into that neighborhood, and this white car made the exact same moves that I did. I was so scared and afraid to look away from the road for even 1 second, so I didn't grab my phone to call the police. I've been to this neighborhood a couple of times, and I knew that it had some dead ends for resident driveways. I was terrified I would end up in one. I made a bunch of crazy turns and pressed on the gas, trying so hard not to panic or turn into a dead end. I lost sight of them for a second. I quickly parked my car in between 2 others that were parked, and I ran out of my car into a dark area between 2 houses where I sat behind a bush, crying and shaking. I waited a while before I got up and walked around the neighborhood with stealth until the coast was clear. I knew they would recognize my car, and I didn't know what would happen if I was still inside. Did I do the right thing? Is there a better way to prevent this? Story 2, Ellen Possessed. So a few days back, I returned back to my college campus. For a bit of a background, we are 2 girls living in a small flat. Nothing too fancy. Yesternight, we thought it would be a nice idea to have some guests around for the usual gossips and tomfoolery. So it was around midnight, and we were just joking around while I was preparing some mac and cheese for the girls. I am the chef in the group. I was bringing the tray to the table when I started to feel my head getting lighter, and I still remember the tray falling off my hands, though I don't remember me hitting the floor. Either way, the next day I woke up on my roommate's bed with her sleeping on mine. First thing in the morning, I apologized. I've had a history with weak immune system and illnesses. However, she was puzzled. She and all of my friends deny me falling to the floor or being unconscious. In fact, according to them, we chatted till 2, and I fell asleep on my roommate's bed while talking. Am I going insane? This is not the first time something like this has happened. I've mentioned that in my previous posts. However, it's the first time something like this has happened when I am not alone, and it's scarier. Does anyone know what it is? Is my mind playing tricks on me, or is it paranormal? Story 3, weird, scary story. Okay, maybe this will not be exciting or interesting like some other stories, but it's 100% true, and I didn't experience it myself, but creeps me out. Little background first. I live in Croatia, in relatively big town, and my grandfather lived in a small village on seashore. When I was a kid, every summer, my parents and sisters and me would go there on vacation. It's very nice and beautiful there. But when my grandfather was young, it was rough life there, and often hunger, especially during World Wars. So at one time, I think 40s and 50s, many people emigrated from there to USA. One of people who emigrated when he was like 18 was my grandfather's best friend. Actually, they were like distant cousins, but that's irrelevant. So that guy would often return on summers on vacation with his American wife and American children, and he would remodel and upgrade and enlarge his house, planning to retire here. And he would always hang out with my grandpa talking about youth and such. And when he retired from his work, he did return permanently. When I was a kid, that man died from heart attack, and then my grandfather told me, and my dad, this very weird story. It was when his friend returned from America when he retired, and he invited my grandpa and some others to his house that night for cards, wine, and catching up. When my grandfather was approaching his house, there was a little girl in white sleeping dress playing on ground in front of house. He said hello to her and asked her name. She said Lucia. Then he asked her, "Where's your parents?" And she pointed toward Village Centaur, toward church specifically. He asked her, "Where's your grandpa?" And she made motion like, "I don't know." He told her, "You speak good Croatian." She giggled and said to him, "You too." My grandfather assumed it's his friend's grandchild from USA. His children was coming more rare then when they were kids, but still they did. Then he went inside and there was like 5 of them, and they talked about childhood and such. And on some point his friend said he is divorced now, but is very happy because his children coming to visit him here soon. My grandfather was confused and asked him, "So your granddaughter is with you?" And man replied, "What are you talking about? I don't have granddaughter. I have 3 grandsons and they are all in USA. My grandfather asked, "Who is that girl in front of house?" And no one saw her knew, and she was not there anymore. Then my grandfather told me that only days later, he remembered that his friend had a sister named Lucia, who died when she was 6 from tuberculosis. And he figured out when he asked her, "Where are your parents?" she pointed toward graveyard, not church. If I would describe my grandfather with one word, it would be serious. He was one of that old school, hard-working rural people. He was not superstitious at all. Was maybe little religious, but not much. He was type of guy who would only watch news on TV and nothing else. Books he would read, but nothing fiction. It's not his type of person that would make stuff up. He was also a mentally healthy person until he died. That story creeped me out when I was a child, and I always was a little freaked out and paid attention when I walked near that house. But I never saw anything, and I didn't think about it in years and decades until yesterday. Here I am in my 40s now with my own family in this village, and my daughter, who is 10 years old, returning from beach just before dawn and told me she saw a very weird girl in weird white dress. I asked her where, and she described that same house. This all story come back to me. I never told her this story. Didn't even think about it since she was born.